You know, you'd think high-level diplomacy is all about carefully chosen words and polite handshakes. But every now and then, things get a little, well, a little more personal. We're about to jump into one single, awkward exchange that tells you so much about the incredible pressures and high stakes of modern international relations. Okay, so just picture this. You're Australia's top diplomat in the United States. You're in a super important meeting at the White House with your own prime minister. And then, former President Donald Trump looks you dead in the eye and says this. The whole room just erupts in laughter. I mean, that's the kind of moment that could literally end a career. So, how on earth did we get here? How does an ambassador end up in this kind of direct, personal back and forth with a former and maybe future world leader? Well, the story involves some now deleted tweets, a whole lot of political drama, and billions of dollars hanging in the balance. Let's get into it. To really understand that "I don't like you either" comment, we've got to go back in time, back before the ambassador was even an ambassador. See, the diplomat we're talking about is Kevin Rudd, and he has a long and very, very public history.
Rudd's journey is absolutely key here. This guy wasn't just any diplomat. He was a two-time Prime Minister of Australia. But look at that middle entry, 2020. That's the crucial part. Before he took the job in Washington, Rudd was a private citizen and a very, very vocal commentator who had some really strong opinions.
And you know how it is. The internet has receipts. During that 2020 period, Rudd went on Twitter and shared his totally unfiltered thoughts on the sitting president of the United States. And when he got appointed ambassador, yeah, those tweets suddenly became a very big deal. And we're not talking about some mild criticism here. Exhibit A, this was one of the now deleted posts. He straight up called Trump the most destructive president in American history. I mean, that alone would be enough to cause some diplomatic headaches, but oh, he didn't stop there. He went even further, calling him a traitor to the West. That is incredibly strong language. He wasn't just criticizing policy, he was questioning his loyalty to the entire Western alliance. And finally, he made it personal, calling him a village idiot. So when Rudd, now Ambassador Rudd, owned up to these old comments in that White House meeting, Trump's comeback, "I don't like you either," suddenly makes a whole lot more sense, right? So, as you can imagine, news of this exchange traveled fast, and the political fallout back in Australia was immediate. What was being called banter in the White House quickly turned into a serious political fight back home. The split was instant. In one corner, you had Australia's opposition saying Rudd's position was untenable and that he had to be fired, period. But in the other corner, you had Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, the man who hired Rudd, who just brushed it off, calling the whole thing banter.
Prime Minister Albanese didn't just downplay it, though. He went on the offensive, launching this really strong public defense of his ambassador. He completely reframed the conversation away from old tweets and onto present-day performance.
Right there in front of U.S. politicians from both parties, Albanese gave this glowing review. He wasn't just defending Rudd, he was selling him as an absolute asset, a tireless networker who knows everyone. The focus was shifting from personality to actual results. But here's the kicker, and this is where the story gets really interesting. The backup for Rudd didn't just come from his own team, it came from the other side of the political aisle, right there in Washington, D.C., which kind of suggests Rudd's work was bigger than partisan politics.
This quote is from Michael McCaul, a prominent Republican, and he's talking about AUKUS. That is the massive multi-billion-dollar submarine deal between Australia, the UK, and the US. For a top Republican to publicly say that Rudd was essential to those talks, that's a huge vote of confidence, showing that despite the old tweets, the ambassador was getting the job done.
Okay, so this brings us to the real heart of the matter. While all the headlines were focused on this awkward personal moment, the visit itself was about monumental strategic and economic deals. What was really going on in the background while everyone was distracted by the banter? Why was it so important for the Australian Prime Minister to be there? Well, the answer comes down to a whole lot of money and some really, really critical resources. Let's just start with this number, $8.5 billion. That's the value of just one of the deals signed during this trip. We're not talking about small change here. This is a massive investment. And this wasn't just any deal. It was for rare earth minerals. Think of them as the secret ingredient for, well, for everything, from your smartphone to fighter jets. Securing this kind of partnership with the US was a huge strategic win for Australia. So when you put it all together, you see the real picture. You've got the AUKUS deal, the rare earths partnership, and the overall health of the security alliance.
This is what was on the line. The personal spat was just the sideshow to these massive national interests.
So, what's the big takeaway from this whole strange diplomatic moment? Well, there's one last little detail that kind of puts everything into perspective.
That's right. Just minutes after that very public jab and all the laughter, Trump reportedly turned to Rudd and cleared the air, basically saying, "We're good, all is forgiven." The confrontation was over almost as quickly as it began.
And in the end, this is what mattered. The Prime Minister of Australia publicly thanked Kevin Rudd, saying the visit's success, including that $8.5 billion deal, was because of his hard work. In the high-stakes world of diplomacy, it's clear results spoke way louder than old tweets.
It all leaves us with this crucial question for our times, right? The whole episode is this fascinating clash between personal histories and professional duties, all sped up by social media, where every comment you've ever made can live forever. So, in this new world of diplomacy, can leaders really separate the person from the position for the greater good? Or is that line just blurred for good?